Welcome, everyone, to the EnLight Life Podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Cousins, and today I am bringing you another special guest that is very dear to my heart, Wade Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Many of you know his products, will have me heard speaking about his products, which I would say, I've tried them all and they're all really, really great products. My favorite ones definitely are his magnesium, both the magnesium breakthrough as well as the magnesium powder, simply because it's got so many different, 7 or 8 different magnesium kinds in there. So it's a very complete formula. The sleep breakthrough formula is fantastic if you want a little bit of more support for your sleep cycle. But the reason why I wanted to interview him is because it was really Wade and his book, which is available on his website. And I've also shown it several times, which he wrote in collaboration with his business partner. And I loved everything that he has to say in terms of diet variation and the concept that there isn't really one diet that is going to fit all of us for the rest of our lives. And in many ways, it was him probably now 3.5 years ago that really started to open my mind up to this concept that, hang on, maybe there isn't, this one diet that we all are looking for. And that some of us at some point thought that they had found, right? Because I know it's happened to me so many times in my life where I thought like, okay, this is it. And it works for a while and we have all the benefits. And then we get to a certain point where it's like, hang on, it's actually no longer working as well as we think it was. And I did see that with myself. I saw it with my clients over and over. Many influencers we know, of course, going back and forth between one diet and several years after they sort of demonize that one diet and then, they celebrate another one. And when I was observing this, I realized, well, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't think that we should be, celebrating and then demonizing the same diet. But if that's what's happening, it's because, this is what I thought to myself, it's because there has to be positive aspects in each and every one of the diets that are being celebrated. And there has to be negatives, downside from all of these diets as well. So long story short, it was between Wade Lightheart, who we're interviewing here today, as well as Joel Greene. I would say those have been my two biggest influences in really over the last 3 years, opening my mind more and more and more to let go of any dogmatic aspect of diet and to really understand that there is benefits to all diet philosophies and that we could and should, and I do now, incorporate every single one of these diet philosophies into our lifestyle over the course of the month, the year. And then, of course, certain diets are going to resonate a little bit more with our biology, and that is where DNA definitely comes in. Our genetics do play a huge role. They're our blueprint. But then also epigenetics will tell another side of the story and will inform what is going to work for us, for how long, when, why, and if at all. So, without further ado, have a listen to this wonderful interview. I really appreciate Wade's insights and wisdom. And because, like very few others, he has an extremely open mindset that has been gained through years of trial and error. And of course, now, have become his set of wisdom. And I would say anyone in the industry or at this stage, I feel anyone who's been in the health and wellness industry for long enough, meaning 20, 25 plus years, we're going to get to, I feel, to an insight that is pretty much that of Wade Lightheart, and that's there is no one dogma that we should be holding on to, but let's let go of all dogma and let's play with all of these various diets to our benefit, and let's not allow them to get to detriment. So I hope you enjoy this podcast and that you are going to learn a lot just as I did and come away inspired and with a much more open mind and also relaxed mind, because the beauty in my experience of letting go of all these dietary dogmas and kind of, this attachment to like, okay, well, which diet is it? That is the game that certainly inside of my mind, I did play for a very long time, and it's not a fun one. Whereas coming out the other side and understanding when what is applicable is true freedom, but also true health. Enjoy.
Welcome to the EnLight Life Podcast with Alexandra Cousins. Together we'll demystify disease and the debates around health, empowering you toward real regeneration and a life of vibrant vitality.
There we are.
Hello, Wade.
How's Bali treating you?
Second try. Ooh, I don't know where the balloons come from. Like,
I think you can do like this, like hearts and stuff. I've seen them on my phone and stuff. It's I don't know. You can do these moves, and the AI is, scanning our brains and doing stuff. Who knows?
Oh well, I guess we just have to go with it.
It's looking more and more like the Terminator. It really is. Elon Musk predicts he predicts 20% chance AI kills us. Sam Altman said 50%, and I'm like, how do these people how is this even allowed? But there's no universal AI property, and people can't comprehend it. That, like they said, like in a few years, AI is going to be smarter than all the humans combined.
I'd say that, that to me wouldn't surprise me at all, because that's not going to take, I mean, I use ChatGPT for, things like helping me write, and I often go, wow, you just wrote or summarized something better than I ever could.
Right. And did you see the new iterations? I think it was on Grok, was it? Or one of them. But so what they realized is that when you write something, you reiterate things and you refine it. So the new AI, you'll write it, the first draft, and it'll say, well, let's kind of do this. And then it rewrites. So you're instructing it to refine the process.
Totally. That's basically what I'm using it for. Like I'll write something and I'll say, I don't think I've put it quite correctly, but this is what I'm trying to say. You could probably do it better. And boom, so I mean, yes, is it already in some ways more intelligent than a human being and quicker? In some ways, yes. And of course, what always gets to me, and that kind of leads us straight into biooptimizers, into enzymes, into the health stuff. Every day I see stuff that happens out there in the health world, in the medical field, and I go, really, are we still that backward?
Yes.
That's...
I am ranting on this quite a bit lately, so it's really important. And we've already embraced it, but because we've embraced it, that doesn't make the regular population comprehend that. And so we have to bring them along. And that is a new paradigm for health.
Mm-hmm.
What is, so I call it Buckminster Fullering it. Don't fight against the system that's already there. Build one that is so superior that the old one falls away. That's the only way out, because
100%.
the political, big pharma, big agri, industrial complex, and all of their cronies will essentially cannibalize itself. And when you go into that machine, it's so much, it'll catabolize you as well. So it's important just to move to a completely different paradigm, because that ship has sailed. It's, you're just going to go through the meat grinder on that one.
100%. Yes. No, I mean, I also would say my first few years doing what I was doing, I was fighting the system until I realized, right? Like, you want to go out there and go, and even like waking people up. No, we can only be the examples. And I always said, like, become the proof.
Yeah, exactly. And, the interesting thing is the COVID mandates have caused an internal cracks within the machine about how intelligent doctors and medical people were silenced, and researchers and government. And then and so that's why they're trying to censor the internet, because the corruption is now self-evident by how many people got shut down within that. And it's crumbling from within. So I'm a big power versus force person from David Hawkins.
Yes, love that.
That's how we built our company. That's what we build our philosophy from. And I'm not, like, my natural nature is to get in there and fight, yeah, I can rant and rave and go off like the best of them, but I have to bring myself back to that equation and kind of, okay, we're just going to build a better paradigm. That's what we're doing at Bioptimizers, and it's fun.
Well, I'm so grateful that you agreed to meet with me a second time, because the first time, and it was such a good one. I was like, oh, I was trying to get my husband to, like, can't we just find it somewhere? Anyway, it was gone.
All right.
So here we are again, second time. And yeah, really, I'm further reading. I am reading your beautiful book and nutrition Bible from cover to cover. So,
wow, you're very motivated if you're going cover to cover.
I am. And I'm loving everything. And I would really say, and I've read a lot of books and done a lot of courses, and I would say for the regular and the person who wants to, take themselves to optimal health and to optimal physical health, etc., this is the book to get. My son's big into bodybuilding now, and of course he thinks he knows better because what does mom know? But I'm like, you have to read this book. And I would say if there's one book that everyone should get to understand nutrition, it's this one. And what I love, just before we get into the enzymes, because that's kind of, it's also like my love and mission to get people to understand, like, what is the power of enzymes? Why are enzymes so powerful? But what I love about the book, where it's not about enzymes, even though you talk a little bit about them. What I love about the book is that you get people out of the polarized thinking. And that is so important nowadays, of course, for everything, but especially for health and nutrition. We need to get in. And I have been an advocate for, raw veganism. Mm-hmm. And even though I'm still 98% living all of that, I also got to the point where, no, polarized thinking, the minute that we say this is the way and the only way, we're simply ignoring so many factors, so many possibilities. And so I love the fact that you really go deeply into this and you say we can thrive. And I fully believe that we can all thrive on a different diet that is optimal for us, our belief system, our spiritual development, right? Our preferences, like, we can thrive. So maybe let's start there, because this war on diets is boring.
Yeah. One of the components, I wanted to call the book Diet Wars, and the end of them. And our goal was to end this, mindless, confusing competition for let's break it down. So how do different diets arise? Well, generally, somebody was struggling on a particular diet or lack of a diet strategy. They ran into some obstacles. They maybe went into the medical industry or whatever, couldn't get answers, started experimenting with different things, found a charismatic figure that was communicating some, fundamental principles about diet that they didn't have. They applied it. They went deep. It worked for them. They recovered from their conditions. They looked really better. They reversed their aging. They had all of that stuff and became so passionate and motivated by the transformational experience that they had that they said, wow, the whole world needs to know about that, because if it worked for me, it'll work for everybody, is the primary assumption. And then inside of that, what you gather a following, followers, you build a book, you create a marketing system, there's a social media component. All these things are now conspiring together to prop up your status in the world as a nutritional authority, as a diet guru, as a health advocate, whatever. And you will start to get rumblings of the people that doesn't work. And we start the book talking about the bell curve of distribution of, how well any given product or service or diet or anything will work. And that is, people don't know there's a standard deviation distribution, and your top 2% is kind of the elite. So when you go to IQ, for example, if you're in the top 2%, you qualify for Mensa. Okay. And if you're in the bottom 2%, you'd probably be under guidance because you're mentally incapable of taking care of yourself. Okay. Well, you can apply this to how well a drug works, how well a diet works, how well people like a particular type of music. This standard deviation curve exists through everything. It's very interesting. And then when you come to your health, there's a lot of biological and genetic factors, hormones, age, all these things that are oftentimes overlooked inside of a dietary conceptual model or principles or a concept, like a keto diet or paleo diet or a raw food diet or whatever. And there's always, when you're trying to condense something as sophisticated as the human body and what's read of it, a bunch of condensed principles that apply in a general sense under a general set of conditions. But excellence is found in the level beyond that, the nuances within the individual biological variants, and also the conditions that individual might be in. Are they under the conditions of disease? Are they under the conditions of old age? Are they under the conditions of athletic performance? What genetic factors might be influenced in their response to this? So you got all these super doers on one side. They've lost weight, cured diseases, look great. Everybody loves them. And on the other side, you've got, I tried that diet. I got sick. I gained a bunch of weight. I contracted a disease. And so you have the advocates and the haters. And the haters who are, really struggled with a particular diet, they now go on the same mission that the first advocate did, and they follow a bunch, and then find the diet that's right for them and a charismatic individual, or they become one, and then they start the new diet. And part of gaining attention in the world that we have today is not by celebrating the merits or commonality within your diet strategy. It's to attack the tenets of another diet philosophy to push yourself up a little higher. And I've watched this go on literally my whole life since I was 15. So I've been watching this for over 35 years unfold, and I can almost predict what is going to be the next diet trend. Yeah, they slap a new name on it. They add an unusual food from some far off place to it, which is a key, product category that supports it. And away they go, and whatever the medium is in popular marketing, technological distribution, then that message goes, and away we go. And so I see this all the time. And then what happens is the end consumer, the person, what I call mom, pa America, or mom, pa wherever you live, mom, pa human, who is struggling with obesity, struggling with all of if we look across the world, we're going to hit 50% obesity in the next 5 years. And all of the associated disease risks that go with that, the lost hours and productivity. And some people within that group say, I've got to stop this. I don't know where to go. So they go online, and what do they see? They see all of this conflicting information. And we all hear this thing, well, everybody's different. Okay, great. Well, how am I different? How are you different? How does a person determine what diet's right for them, what's right for them right now, and what's right for them in the long term? And having gone through many phases myself, and same as Matt, my co-author, we recognize that, like, he's a keto guy. He's been on the carnivore diet. I was a raw foodie for 2 years, competing in bodybuilding shows, right? We push the envelopes of what's possible or what's on the edge, and then we worked back from those edges to find common principles and where someone might find those nuances. And so the book was designed as a defense guide, essentially, so that people wouldn't get hoodwinked, as well as an illustrative guide to how they select the specific elements that would allow them to optimize themselves for the diet that they felt that they could stay with, that they could live with. And we talked about social and psychological, cultural and spiritual values, which are a big part of adherence. If you're a Hindu person and you want to be on an all-meat diet and you're very religious, it's going to be very tough. If you're a devout Muslim and you got to do Ramadan, but you don't have great genes for fasting, you're going to have to mitigate for that. Now, you can get away with all those things if you know how to mitigate. I do it in the sport of bodybuilding. It's not common for vegetarians to be bodybuilding champions, but I found ways to mitigate those constraints and became very successful in it. And so you can do that with virtually any diet, and that's what we're here to advocate.
Absolutely. And I love that. And yeah, I think, again, in all, not just in nutrition, but in all things healthcare and health optimization, we need to realize that there are gray zones, there's nuances. And the minute that we want to say this is the only way, I mean, I would say it applies to all things in life, or probably almost all things. We need to learn to live in the gray zones. And I can see how for people, for example, even though, yes, I am still a vegan, every now and again, like literally once or twice a month, I'll have a piece of salmon, more so because after 35 years of eating disorders, eating that piece of salmon every now and again gives me a sense of freedom that somehow, I go, oh yeah. And it's not even a nutritional requirement. Like, I'm fully aware I could do without it, right? And sometimes I do go months without it. But if I go out there as I am now and go, this is what I do. Oh, well, so first of all, now Alex is no longer vegan.
Correct. Yeah, you hit such a big point. And the social tribe, what I call dietary tribalism, that I'm identified as a carnivore or a keto or a paleo or whatever. And within that identity, that rigid identity, we become part of that. It becomes part of our self-identification. And we talked a little bit about that, I think, about if I'm going to try this food that's not on my diet, there's this huge emotional, psychological structure. Well, who am I if I'm on a raw foodie and have a piece of salmon? If I'm a keto person and I start eating carbs, does that make me a failed keto person? And these are very big obstacles. And if you look at the studies just on placebo effects and nocebo effects, how much your mind can make something work or not work. And that's an identity as a big limiting factor when we try to box ourselves into identity, because one of the things we illustrate within the book is that, let's say you switch, and I've seen this many times. I've seen people, let's say they were sick, highly toxic or whatever, and they went to a vegetarian diet and then went to a raw food diet and, got rid of all these conditions and everything, because essentially they benefit from the highly restrictive nature of that diet philosophy, but they get to a point where the benefits of restriction are done. And now they have some big dietary holes that they haven't addressed because they wouldn't take supplements or they wouldn't take these other things because they're only natural and organic. And like, I remember going to the raw food festival and people are going, what percentage of raw are you, with this glazed eyes and wearing pyramids on their head? And everybody was arguing, you know, it was the most biodynamic, organic, restructured, alien infused seed grown under frequency. Like, it got so ridiculous that I was like, and I see it in the biohacking industry now. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like, you know, this total craziness. And it's fun and it's a great adventure, but that person, let's say that's the starving vegan, the starving raw foodist, let's say, that hasn't got it quite right. Then they go, oh my God, and they break down one day and they start eating meat. And they go, oh my God, because there were some elements within that made them feel good because they're so deficient. So meat, I was a fool, you know, and now it's like I was the down by the river sermon. There I was down by the river on a raw food diet, almost dying and wasting away. And then I discovered beef, and now I eat beef all the time, beef for breakfast, beef. So they go down that road, and they go down there for 3 or 4 years. And then they develop some other issue. And then they're like, oh, I was the beef, you know, so there's another down by the river speech, and then they switch over. And the most passionate and most extreme people, well, as humans, we're fascinated with those types of folks. We're fascinated at people that drive Formula One cars. We're fascinated with 7 feet tall athletes in basketball that have all these abilities. We're fascinated by people who want to get in a UFC cage and fight each other or go down a mountain on a pair of skis at 100 kilometers. And like, we are fascinated and entrenched by extremism as a nature. So that personality type becomes very magnetic and they communicate well. And we're like, yeah. And all of a sudden you're off with the tribe. Like, you know, like it's almost like a hypnotism that happens to us. And you start to identify with that. And our goal was to find, and both Matt and I have been zealots. Like, I'm not here to talk
Me
down
too.
to people. I'm here to share with people like, okay, I fell into these traps and I've been in the raw food, vegan, vegetarian, and bodybuilding communities and organic. So I've played the restriction game extremely well. I'm really good at these very limited models. And now that I'm in my 50s, I also see the liabilities within it. And I'm trying to help people avoid those and to make smart decisions and know exactly what to do. And so the layout, the chapters are designed to identify, oh, here's this. I can go to that chapter, read about it, and see if I'm getting hooked into one of these ideologies. And that's no disrespect to the people that start them. I believe their stories. I believe the testimonials. I do believe it. And I think most of them are motivated by good intentions, but they're just simply not nuanced enough within their public presentation. Sometimes privately they might be, because of the benefits that come with being on that extreme side and the attention units that you get and the mathematical algorithms on division. So I can get up there and throw shade at someone else, and the algorithms love conflict and reward conflict, and that gets me more followers, and that means more money.
Yeah. Whereas the hardest thing, and this is what I'm passionate about teaching now, after having been also through all the iterations of extremism, you know, there was a time where I was like, I think I'm going to become a breatharian. You know, it seems so.
That one, yeah, I've read all about it. I'm really fascinated.
And there was a moment where I really felt like this is what's going to happen. And, you know, and I think back to myself and I go, oh, you were so sweet. You know, what a sweet thing to, and how beautiful, you know, and I'm grateful that I went through all of these iterations, because otherwise, you know, of course, we wouldn't be here knowing, right? But I can also see how
does that qualify you and me as failed breatharians?
Well, I would say, like, I'm glad to be a failed breatharian, because like the freedom now, and still, it's funny now, still when I eat food again, so many years of eating this. So I am so happy and grateful for where I am at now.
Yeah.
Like the joy and the freedom, and because now it's like I no longer feel like I want to rip my hair out, not knowing which way to go, right? And that was me for so many years. It was like, well, which way? And you know, every now and again, not every now and again, every month, every couple months, someone new comes out with their new philosophy, and it's like, literally, I remember going many years, I would pay $1 million to know which way is the way.
Yeah.
Right. And now to feel like just the peace that I feel in my body and my mind to go, you know what? You're in the Tao, you got on your little boat and you're just floating down the river in peace. And I think that to me is already, a huge part, certainly for me, of health. And at the same time, I can see how it is the most difficult thing to get out of extreme thinking and to let go of the idea that you have an identity as anything,
Big time.
bodybuilder included, and to just go like, I am just me living this experience of life, being interested in everything, but ultimately knowing that what is best is to be, my dad would tell me, the golden middle. You got to walk the golden middle. And that is the hardest path to walk because everyone wants to be extreme.
Yeah. I always found, the Buddha talked about the middle path, but the Buddha sat under a banyan tree from 7 years to put himself through the most craziest disciplines ever in order to get to the place that the middle path is the way. So there's something to learn from people such as yourself that have gone down extremism, but it's not going to get the population. And my message right now to all of the nutritionists, health advocates, exercise experts is like, collectively as a group, we have to take responsibility for the information confusion that has been distributed to the people who could benefit from it. And I don't believe it's an accident that the big agriculture and big pharma, they actually benefit from us attacking each other in the philosophies that we advocate, even though probably 80% of the principles are actually universal, right? Eat real food, get it as produced in as much nutrient grown soils, or if it's meat, it's grown organically, or it's out in the wild. Keep all the chemicals and the preservatives and the antibiotics and the dyes out of my food, get it fresh, get it low. Like all of these things are universal principles. Make sure you have a sufficient amount of protein, make sure you have the right essential fatty acids, try to use, healthy carbohydrates that are in alignment with your blood sugar stability. Like I hear this in every one of these diet strategies. And now we have the technology through genetics and continuous glucose monitors and hormone panels that you can actually do your own experiments and find out what is right for you right now. And when that changes, you're not so locked into something that you could move fluidly into optimizing the diet for you. And there's always nuances within any philosophy. Like Matt, for example, just discovered that he had a certain type of fat that he was using a lot in a keto diet that didn't work for his genetics, right? So he built that in. He made that change even after 23 years of being on a ketogenic diet. And he has more carbohydrates than most people because he found out he can eat up to 250 grams of carbs in a day and still be in ketosis because he's so adapted now. So he has a couple of days where he loads up on carbohydrates because he likes the exercise benefits and how he looks and feels when he's loaded up on glycogen as opposed to when he's not. So all of these things are nuances that it takes sometimes years and decades to figure out for yourself.
Yeah. And at least for me, I'm at the point, or several years ago where I was like, you know what, I don't want to help the extremists. I'm here to help, or I'm not here to bring people into raw food and all of that. I'm here to help the masses, right? And and so for the masses need to know, get out of the diet war game, find what is right for you. And, the one book, if you want to have it all in one book, go and read the Ultimate Nutritional Bible. And from here, I want to go into, because of course, the reality is that most people, yes, okay, there's nutritional issues that need to be addressed and so forth. But what I'm seeing, and I'm sure this is what you're seeing, I mean, very few people these days can boast good health. Like just, this was me for 40 years of my life. I was like, well, I don't feel good. I just, I'm thinking I'm doing all the things, but I don't feel good. And it took a long time to get to a point where it's like, wow, every day. I mean, I just didn't know for most of my life that you could feel what life was supposed to feel like, life in a body. I just didn't know what was possible. And then on top of it, the reality is that nowadays most people are really dealing with a long list of autoimmune conditions, a long list of symptoms and conditions that they don't even quite know what it is. And then, everybody loves to have a diagnosis and to hold on to the diagnosis. And of course, every year the list grows. Whereas I feel what we're both saying is let go of the diagnosis, optimize your health, and a huge piece of that, instead of going at it by chasing symptoms, is simply take your whole body, every system in the body, to a level where disease simply cannot thrive. And that's where enzymes really do play a big role. So let's get into the enzymes.
Yes. So when I began investigating enzymes now, it's over 20 years ago, all my training as a nutritionist and the exercise field and all that stuff, there would be a brief mention of enzymes, and then they would get on with the rest of the book. You might get a couple paragraphs. So enzymes control everything from thinking to blinking. There's over 25,000 different enzymes in the body. Two things do work in the body: probiotics and enzymes. That's it. We call them bioworkers. In other words, they do all the work inside the biology. So an enzyme is a catalyst that accelerates biochemical reactions. It's like cash in your bank. The more cash that you have in the bank, the more checks that you can write. And from a biological terms, it's more biological checks that you can write, whether that's uncoupling DNA and rebuilding new stuff, whether it's converting the protein that you consume into the amino acids that you need, whether that is a detoxification pathway, whether that's building a neurotransmitter that you need in order for your brain to function. All of these things are controlled by enzymes. And humans are the only species that actually eat an enzymatic deficient diet, in that all food consumed in its natural raw state has its enzymes intact. So you don't get the protein, carbohydrates, fats, and vitamins and minerals. And just on top of that, you get the enzymatic capacity of that animal. And so whether you're a tiger eating zebras, a bear eating salmon and blueberries, or a horse eating grass, I'm basically outlining, herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. There's different responses to that, and they're still eating it in a live state. Well, humans, we're the most adaptable species, and through that, we created methods of preservation that destroy enzymes, pasteurization, radiation, cooking. These things had benefits of storage and portability, and allowed us to eat food that would go bad, so we could store it in a great way, which alleviated times of famine, which were really problematic throughout all of history. So we took a lot of advantages from that, but that became so distributed across the world, primarily with the industrialization of food production, that we didn't get local vegetables and fruit. We didn't eat the things out of our garden or a fruit tree we got them all in a superstore. So slowly but surely, over the last 100 years, or maybe the last couple hundred years, we've an increasingly reduced amount of enzymes in our diet. And we've increased the amount of toxins. So toxin removal out of the system is also tagged to an enzymatic process. And so you may have suboptimal detoxification genes, and that means you don't produce enough of the enzymes to detoxify your system. Well, people like that are going to have problems much sooner than someone that has maybe optimal detoxification pathways. So it's not as clearly distributed. Simultaneously, if you have a deficient enzymatic pathway in lipase, the enzyme that breaks fat, you'll probably see skin conditions or membrane problems at the cellular level. If it's protein, you may have trouble building muscle or building the neurochemical pathways in your brain, or the neurotransmitters for your brain. If you have poor, carbohydrate enzymes like amylase, then you may be more sensitive to blood sugar fluctuations than someone else. If you don't have the good cellulase enzymes that break down plant matter, you might have a real hard time on a higher plant-based diet or higher fiber because you can't break that stuff down, so it feels painful. So what we did is I dove into it, and I got so into it, and I haven't stopped for over 20 years. We can take enzymes to optimize people whose dietary habits are not in alignment with a particular strategy, or they can make diets that wouldn't be that optimal for them, but they're optimal, like biologically, we can alleviate that with enzymes. And then we can also use enzymes to accelerate healing programs, which I've done as well, where you load up. And some of the most famous stuff is Dr. Gonzalez and his super loading of proteolytic enzymes in cancer patients. He had over 14,000, persons that he documented trying to prove that it was wrong, and found out it was the inverse. As you add more of these enzymatic bank account dollars, you can recover. And to circle us around to your point, and we'll come back to it, is when you're talking about a disease state. So what is a disease? A disease is a label for a set of symptoms for something going on in the body. And the medical system primarily treats those symptoms. In fact, that's what it says it does in the New England Journal of Medicine. We don't cure diseases, we treat the symptoms of. What we're looking at as a new paradigm is like, well, how do we go upstream from these side effects to see what deficiency or what toxin is disrupting the natural biological flow, and how do I attack that with nutrients or workers, or clean that element out of the system? And if you know how to do that, and that's where there's a growing field, which we've belonged in for a long time, all of a sudden those symptoms go away. A disease is just a label for a bunch of symptoms. It's not a real thing. And people have to understand that. Like, health isn't a real thing. It's a terminology for feeling good. And feeling good means all of those systems are working relatively good. And feeling bad means that there's something there. You might not have a disease put to it, but you don't feel good. To me, that is a disease. You don't feel good because there's something not working. And later on, that is going to lead to disease.
Yeah, I mean, that's where recruiting enzymes, taking enzymes, I always explain to people, it's like having Pac-Mans, a gazillion Pac-Mans, right? And instead of just doing the job on your own in your body with what you have, with the limited bank account that you have as well, the more Pac-Mans we can recruit, the more, as you explained, the more things we're going to be able to do in the body, or the more things, the more processes the body is going to be able to carry out without issues.
I'll give you an example on that specifically for our listeners. So I was on a very famous person's podcast, and they were very much against my vegetarian diet. And they suggested that I'd be suffering from all this glyphosate stuff, and that I'd have all these oxalic acid issues, and this was going to shut down my kidneys. The typical fear labels that go out there to get attention. And the ironic thing is I've done all my analysis on all of those elements through with my naturopathic doctor. And none of those things have occurred. And I've been on this diet for 23 years. And I challenged them in that interview. But more importantly, two of them, like the glyphosates and the oxalic acid, for example. And I was like, well, yeah, but I was eating oatmeal every day for 2 years preparing for the world championships in bodybuilding. So you'd think there'd be a lot of glyphosates. Plus, there's a bunch of other elements that I could get glyphosates because I eat plants all the time and like have spillover, even though I eat organic. Couldn't happen. This is right. I have none, and I had no oxalic acid. So I took it to the lab, and I said, "What do you suppose? What do you like? How is it that it's possible that I have zero? I don't have any in my body, and I have suboptimal detoxification pathways. That's part of my genetics. This doesn't make sense. What am I doing that would work?" And we did a bunch of research, and what we found is that Enzymes, our formulation, actually breaks down glyphosates. Yeah. And my Vegizymes that I take break down oxalates. And so I didn't know that those enzymes did that until I had a microbiology expert that could actually run an experiment in a lab in a controlled conditions and actually show it right there on the screen. I was like, OMG. Now, I knew that I didn't have that in that situation. And that person was projecting something on based on their knowledge. So there was 2 levels of ignorance there. And through motivation and science and a little bit of luck, I found the answers to why that person was incorrect in projecting that onto me. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting. And, discovery just of the power, as you were advocating, that enzymes to go gobble up things that shouldn't be in the body. They're fantastic for it. And I advocate them a lot to people who are having challenges in their physiology.
Yeah, it's always my philosophy and what I teach my practitioners is really enzymes should be the first thing that we work with. And also because, when I put people on enzyme flushes and so forth, oftentimes they go, the enzymes are making me worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? These enzymes, I didn't have these issues. And now it's like, oh, okay. Well, actually, all the enzymes are doing is they are revealing what is going on in the body, and they are actually part of the healing process. So we just need to continue. And at some point, and what is amazing, you're talking about glyphosates and all of that. We've had such incredible success in removing heavy metals, and of course glyphosate part of that kind of family, but heavy metals, people think chelation therapy is right the ultimate thing, and I always think no, like that's the last thing you want to be doing, whereas slow and steady consumption of enzymes, and let's add some specific clays to it, and the fulvic and humic acids. Yep. Within 1 year, we are heavy metal free without any big, because heavy metal detoxes can be really intense, and you don't need to go through all of that. You don't need to have all of these, you're going to have maybe some detox symptoms, and that's typically more in the gut because of microbiome issues, and, just as oxalate issues are issues around the microbiome. But when we go in with massive doses of enzymes, already, so much can happen. And then we don't need to, and then people go, yeah, but my specific disease, right, but I've got this condition. It's like, no, you don't understand. We are going up the ladder, and we are really taking action where it matters the most. Enzymes, like you say, probiotics and the whole world around the microbiome. And then another real passion of mine is peptides, working primarily with peptide bioregulators, simply because they are also what makes our DNA function and everything function correctly. And then we can also work with the long chain peptides, the injectable peptides, to then optimize. But ultimately, work with enzymes, probiotics, fix the gut, and then, go in with some peptides. And it's like, wow, and then of course it takes time.
right? Because that's the other thing. Oftentimes people, they think, oh, if I just take like, what supplement do you have for like this condition?
Yes. Yes.
And so, I really feel the biggest piece of education is for people to understand what you said earlier. A disease is just a bunch of symptoms that we've given a name to. But it's a whole bunch of systems in the body that already, so now I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. How long? Okay, 6 months ago. Okay, but Hashimoto's didn't happen 6 months ago.
That's right.
That's been, probably a lead up of 10 years, 15 years, then it depends. Maybe you had 2 super stressful years and so forth. And now we call this condition Hashimoto's and we call this condition whatever, but it's not that you are fighting against, right? We need to rebuild our health. And the analogy that I like to make is, well, how long does it take to create a body that looks like that of an athlete or a bodybuilder when somebody, has never done anything? To be realistic, if we want to do it well, including mobility and flexibility, and like we really want to do it well, not the 12-week programs that, well, realistically, what? I mean, 3-4 years of like discipline.
And that's if you've got great genetics. Most people, it's at least a decade.
I was going to say it's 3-4 years if that's all I do, right? And I'm super disciplined and I'm super non-human because, as humans, like I'm now on a mission now that I'm healthy. Okay, I now want to take my body, physically to the next level. And I'm kind of going like, wow, I know, I mean, now I'm 50 and I know I'm looking forward to when I'm 60. Because I'm going to be consistent, but I also know realistically, like I don't want to bash myself. So, here and there, I'm going to slow things down. I'm going to get a little bit lazy. I'm going to get back onto so realistically, like you say, in a decade at 60, I want to be in the best shape of my life. And so even by telling myself, setting the goal for when I'm 60. And of course there's, goalposts, right? Like by next, yes. And that's how we do it. But it takes time. And to be honest, I started my health journey when I was 40, I was bedridden at 40 and it's taken me, 3 years to go, okay, wow, I think I know where I'm going now. And in another 2 years to start feeling like, wow, I've never felt like this in my life. And then every 6 months incrementally, and then now feeling like, okay, now I really know what I'm doing. I'm super stable. I know what to do when, things shift. Well, so a decade of that. And, a decade probably to become super, super fit, flexible, and all the things. It takes time. But the beauty is that once we're on the path, it just gets better and better and better. And that's, I think, the mental shift for people to make, right? To go, don't be in such a hurry to get rid of, fight a certain disease, but rather build your health, really understand that you are here to build your health. And it's little by little by little.
That's how it works, and I think that's part of the instant, response people are conditioned to is they want everything now. And health it's not a destination, it's a process. And there are signposts along that journey. And depending on where you start is going to determine when and where those signposts come up for you individually. And that is your own unique journey. And I think people have to recognize that, hey, this isn't like I get an outcome and then I own it. That's it. I don't do it anymore. It's about replacing habits that aren't serving you and with habits that do serve you. And people move at a different pace. Some people are extreme and adopt them all. Sometimes people are slower. It doesn't matter. I always say, just keep dropping one bad habit every couple of weeks and replacing it with one good habit. And in a year's time, it's remarkable about where you will be. And then also your understanding of how to change and achieve whatever you want. And when you have
Mm-hmm.
that feeling, as I always tell my clients, I said, if you could spend a day in my body, you'd understand why I do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I can make that happen, but hey, it's open to you, and you have to trust me. And so far, we've been able to help a lot of people with that message.
So let's get maybe a little bit more into the various enzymes and maybe a few questions that I have. You know, a lot of times people will say, especially the ones coming from, you know, the raw food community, they'll go, oh, but enzymes, you know, we're not supposed to take any enzymes from the outside. We're supposed to just, you know, because otherwise we are stopping our own production.
Yeah.
And so what is your reply to that?
Yeah. So if you go to kind of the godfather of the enzyme story, Dr. Edward Howell, he talked specifically and extensively on these topics. And just for people to understand, enzymes are supposed to be present in our food. Now, raw foodists would say, well, I'm eating raw food, the enzymes are present. Well, okay. But we have to realize is we have an enzymatic production capacity in that we'll use an arbitrary number of 100 units. And unfortunately, digestion takes up a considerable amount of it. In fact, most raw foodists spend a lot of time around optimizing the food, whether that's fermenting it and things like that, soaking their seeds, all these things to deactivate the enzyme inhibitors, which are present in many foods. So there's also enzyme inhibitors. And that's a whole process. And the benefit of taking enzymes is that you are essentially putting more deposits in your checks or in your bank account, in your enzymatic bank account. So that what happens is you don't have to diminish your entire resource enzymatic producing capability. So when you add enzymes to the diet, that frees up your enzymatic capacity, not to make digestive enzymes, but to make systemic enzymes, to make enzymes to write other checks in your body. And so when people say that, first off, all food has enzymes present. We're naturally made to consume enzymes. But when you cook it, which is what the raw foodists are saying, well, don't cook your food, don't radiate your food, don't pasteurize it. Yeah, okay, right. But you've got the right principle, but you haven't taken that principle to the next level and said, well, what happens if we started dumping more and more enzymes into the system? Could we accelerate healing, recovery, regeneration, vitality, health, all those things? And we can. I've seen it for over 20 years. People with skin conditions, I give them lipase enzymes and their skin conditions would go away. People that had problems breaking down their protein, I give them proteolytic enzymes and all of a sudden their neurotransmitters turn on and they don't feel depressed and down anymore. People that would be on insulin, I would put them on, carbohydrate metabolizing enzymes, and their insulin levels that they required was much less. So I saw a tremendous amount of it. And then in my own life, as a professional bodybuilder, I was able to take my consumption of protein down from 250 grams a day to 85 grams a day when I was training at the World Champs. I'm the only guy I think ever that went to the World Championships on a raw food diet. And I was able to do that because I was bolstering my raw food diet with a bunch of proteolytic enzymes. And what that allowed me to do, we don't need protein, we need the amino acids from the protein. And that's a conversion process that requires enzymes. And we built the most potent proteolytic enzyme formulation on the planet 20 years ago, and we've improved on that 4 times now because we never stop improving so that I can get more out of a plant-based diet. So many of the blanket statements that might be made are true if you don't understand the enzyme equation. Also, conversely, when I was experimenting with a ketogenic diet, I couldn't do it. I was doing a plant-based version of it. I couldn't do it because after a certain amount of fat, I would just get fat in my stools and I felt terrible. My body doesn't metabolize fats very well. And so when my business partner looked at it, he was like, oh, well, he developed a formulation of a combination of enzymes and bile salts and things like that called Capex, that when I did the same amount of fat on the diet when I took it, all of a sudden I didn't have the fat in my stools and I didn't have that bad feeling. Turns out that product also will break down the maldehyde that is produced from seed oils that everybody's raving about. So we can break that down with enzymes. This, what would be normally a toxin to other people that you might have eaten, whether that was by design or inadvertently. Well, if you got the right enzymes, you're going to break down that toxin. So like you said, the Pac-Man will go in and break that up, and enzymes do that. And if you can do that in your gut before that stuff crosses into the system and disrupts another biological system, well, you've just put an insurance policy on your health to whatever you eat, whatever you consume, whatever. And it's such a great feeling because that's given me so much versatility when I go to social occasions and I go to groups and I'm in places around the world and it's not an optimal diet options that I have. I got my enzymes with me. I got my probiotics with me. I got my hydrochloric acid with me. And I'm like, no problem. I got my little stuff and I eat the food. And even though it's suboptimal, I don't have the digestive stress that I normally would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those enzymes. I actually also think they're the best, version of skincare from the inside.
Yes.
Because, of course, we know when everything is working. So I always say, it's you get everything really in one.
Yep.
And then you don't need a lot of other things. And then, so what about your enzymes? They're fermented.
Yeah. So when you look at enzymes, they're classified into a couple of layers. So there are plant enzymes, there are animal-based enzymes, there's systemic enzymes, and then there's cultured enzymes. So with plant, let's go to plants first. So basically, you'll see like bromelain or papain or something like that, which are kind of the lowest on the totem pole of efficacy in range, although they do operate in a very wide pH range from about 2 to 12, and that's one of the advantages of them. So definitely a help. Then if you go to animal enzymes, and one of the more popular ones would be like the WOB enzyme or something like that, are using they're using specific animals that have certain biological functions. However, the enzyme range of those is relatively limited, but they can be very efficacious for people with certain conditions. Then you go to systemic enzymes. So serrapeptase or nattokinase would be a couple of very popular examples that have big benefits on cardiovascular health and wound healing and things like that. Well, those have to be taken on an empty stomach. They can't, if you make them with food, they don't work. They get destroyed. So, and then you have what's called cultured enzymes. So cultured enzymes are the extraction of enzymes or using various base materials under very controlled conditions. It's a very secretive world, this whole enzyme world. And they ferment out these things. So sometimes you'll see people get concerned about, they'll see a fungus that they have an antifungal thing and they're like, oh, this came from a fungus. Well, no. Funguses have enzymatic processes that are very good. So what these cultured enzymes, they'll extract it from a fungus, they'll extract it from a mushroom, they'll extract it from some element that they're using to ferment under these processes to get an enzyme that essentially is 100 to 1,000 times more powerful than what you'd find in a basic plant or animal enzyme. So as a rule, we only use cultured enzymes in our formulations. It makes them expensive. It makes them, takes longer to develop, but it makes them radically more potent. And so when Matt and I started this, we said, as a company, the only enzymes, we're only going to build enzymes that are better than everybody else, better than anyone's willing or desiring to do, because we feel that this field is probably, and it's nice to hear you talk about this, I think it is the most underestimated field in all of health. I really do.
I agree.
And when you take it and use it and feel it and go through that experience, you get it, but you have to do it. And I started out taking 25 to 30 enzymes a day, what was for a 90-day period, which is what my mentor, Dr. O'Brien, had taught us to do. Well, I felt amazing on that. I felt so good. I never stopped. And so I've continued to do that ever since. And I've been able to overcome a lot of genetic challenges, biological challenges,
And I've been able to demonstrate that it's efficacious even at a world championship level. And I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of clients, literally all over the world. We're up over 500,000 clients now globally that are taking our enzymes and going, man, I can't live without them. I have to have these things, because they're seeing the biological benefits, which are extremely widespread.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've witnessed, literally miracles happen. People where nothing else worked before, just by working with enzymes, in a really big, massive way. Yeah, all kinds of, I mean, from SIBO healing, which, tends to be, people tend to think, well, taking fermented things with SIBO doesn't work. Well, with enzymes, it's a different story. And I'm sure, like, how long are the enzymes fermented?
It varies on the different types of enzymes that are being produced. So for example, with Masszymes, we have 17 different enzymes in that formula. Plus there's cofactors, and cofactors amplify the efficacy. And then just to clarify, you can use a fermentation process to get the enzyme, but the enzymes are extracted out of it. So the downside of a fermentation, if you have a sensitivity to it, it's not going to apply to you. So so people who are concerned about that, it's a warranted concern on the surface, but if you get into the enzymatic story, it's on the long side of it, it's around 6 weeks to produce a really high grade enzyme. On some of the more the elaborate proteases in particular are the most, Japanese are the best at it. They've been doing it for a long, long time. And there's certain enzymes, like we purchase the enzymes from all over the world with various suppliers, and we have a screening process at the lab that allows us to go beyond the lab assay so that we actually know exactly what we're getting in its efficacy. And they have all these weird units to determine its efficacious, and it's very confusing. We literally had to get PhDs to kind of explain and operate this in microbiology so that we would understand it all.
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating. And I must say, to me, enzymes and peptides like that, once I got what it's cool. Like, okay, why are we doing anything else? And of course, other supplements can help here and there. But, I know for myself, when I'm on my bioregulators and enzymes, it's kind of like not much else is needed. Well, I think this conversation was absolutely enlightening, and there's so many and by the way, I love your last name, which goes, everything in my company, it's like EnLight. So cool. You fit right in. Our daughter is Grace Light.
Oh, that's it.
So I mean, I find, again, for me, the mission is about enlightening people about what is health. And if I can leave people with one message, is we don't need to be afraid of disease, because so much of this industry, right, the medical industry, fitness industry, is driven by fear.
Yes.
And people fear death and disease.
Yes.
And my biggest, having dealt with so much of it, is like, we don't need to be afraid of disease. We need to understand it, and we need to understand the gifts that it brings. And then we need to understand what really is disease. So like you said, it's just a symptom of something that is not working in the body. And when we can get that, and we can understand what we need to do, and once again, enzymes start there, everything changes. I mean, I know for me, my outlook on life, the way that I live life, has changed because I now understand how the human body works, and I no longer live in any kind of fear.
Exactly.
And that, to me, that's massive, right? When I feel I am in charge, not so much control, but I am in charge of this vehicle of my life, and that I can take myself wherever I desire to take myself to. And yes, it's going to take time, but wow, the journey is just so utterly beautiful, including the downfalls and, like the pit stops and all of that. Like, it's all good. We're here to grow. And so I absolutely love your message. I love what you do. And of course, I love the tools that you provide for people, from the book to the enzymes. And yeah, just thank you for who you are and for the life journey that has taken you to this very place to be able to share what you do and who you are. So thank you
so much. Hopefully it'll take me to Bali very soon, because I miss that place.
Yes. I would love to have a raw meal.
We'll totally do it. Hopefully that'll be sooner as opposed to later.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Wade, and we'll speak soon.
You got it. Take care.
Thank you. You too.